once you've tasted this soup, well, you're going to have another permanent recipe for your file. It's delicious. I've been sitting here and thinking how much I enjoy doing these videos, how much I enjoy doing YouTube, how much things have changed. I mean, when I started, I didn't have even a decent tripod. The camera I was using, this little itty bitty thing, I mean, I've got it right here. Hang on. This is how I started YouTube, right here. A little bitty Canon camera. Horrible audio. Had no input for audio. No way of doing a lavalier like I'm doing now. The camera I'm using now by comparison is unbelievable. So anyway, been doing it for a while. And when I started with that camera, I did a recipe, cream of mushroom soup. Not your typical cream of mushroom soup. I've had a lot of cream of mushroom soups. You know, I taste them, I see if they're good or not. I can't eat much of any of them because I'm allergic to mushrooms. The last time I made this, the recipe was so good, it was so delicious. I even had a second bowl, and I shouldn't have had a first one. Well, I'm going to have to restrain myself this time to a taste or two because, well, they make me itch really bad. I don't want to itch that much. So this time, my cream of mushroom soup gets provided to my neighbors and my friends. Folks, I'm going to be showing you a fantastic recipe that came from the heart. I didn't invent the recipe cream of mushroom soup, but this version of it is my recipe. And yes, I came up with it. And like I said, it wasn't influenced by other people's recipes. This simply came from inside. This is just me cooking. So I've kept this recipe. I decided to do another video on it since the old video was, well, kind of questionable. I want to do a good video, and this is it. This is cream of mushroom soup. Before we get in the kitchen, before I show you all the goodies, please remember, right now you're watching Texas Cooking Today. Texas Cooking Today is a program that provides tutorials for cooking, and the tutorials are in depth. If you don't like tutorials, folks, hey, just watch the previous episode. It's just the recipe. Please take a look at the links down there in the description box. You'll find my website, you'll find this recipe, and you'll find out a lot more about me. Thank you for watching. Let's get in the kitchen. I'm going to show you the ingredients for a fantastic cream of mushroom soup. Come on. This is cream of mushroom soup, and we have, of course, plenty of mushrooms. I've got 1 pound of cremini mushrooms and 1 pound of white button cap mushrooms. Folks, the cremini is the same thing as a baby bella. So if you see the word cremini or baby bella, it's the same mushroom. It's the portobello mushroom. Whether it's a baby bella or a mushroom or a cremini depends on the age. Cremini's the youngest. It's the little bitty ones. The baby bellas are the ones where it gets up into about, inch and a half in diameter. And then, of course, your big ones, the large caps, those are the full-blown portobello caps. We're looking for cremini or baby bella. Either works. Get some leeks. Now, I got 4 leeks here. These are kind of smallish. I'm thinking we're going to need maybe 3 of these or slightly more. We have some Grana Padano cheese right here. Oh, this is so good. And if you can't find Grana Padano, folks, you can always use some Parmesan, okay? So you can substitute Parmesan. Make sure it's fresh grated like this. Also, heavy cream. Same thing as whipping cream or heavy whipping cream. It's all the same stuff. Some broth. Back here, you can use chicken broth. You can use vegetable broth. So you take your pick. Olive oil, salt, flour, and butter. And with that, we make the best tasting cream of mushroom you're ever going to enjoy. A little prep before we can start slicing is necessary. Mushrooms frequently will have dirt on them. Now you don't want to wash mushrooms because they'll absorb the water and then that's just more you have to cook out. It kind of gets in the way. Just take a brush and dry brush any dirt that's on your mushroom off of your mushroom and they'll be fine, okay? I've done all of my mushrooms this way and they're ready to be cut. So do yours the same way. Leeks are kind of funny. If you've never worked with them, then you're going to be in for a surprise. If you have had leeks, you already know. They are filled with dirt, mud, whatever you want to call it. There's almost always dirt inside of leeks, and it's just because of the way they grow. Here's the thing. If you don't want that in there, you got to clean it out. I'm not going to use the entire leek. The darker portion of the leaf up here, the top of the leaf, I won't be using. I'll be using from where it goes from this light green to dark, right about here. I'll be using 1 to 2 inches of it. So I'll be cutting this about here. And then I'm going to weigh these out and see if I've got about 3 pounds. From there we'll go on. All right, let's do that right now. I must say, when I work in the kitchen, a lot of times I like to glove up. It's a nice way to be able to clean up really quick, move right on to the next task, plus you're being very clean about things. As I mentioned, I'm going to be removing a good chunk of that green. So here's where it turns from one color green to the next, approximately here. And I'm going to take it off approximately there. So that's what I do. This can be used. It's great for cooking into stock. The center leaves are still very tender and they're great to use. Now I want to open this up and let you see. Look at this. There's dirt down in this, dirt in there, more dirt. The more closer to the center you get, you just keep finding dirt. That's mud, folks, right there. That's what we got to wash out of our leeks. Like I said, they almost always have it. I want to prep the tops of 3 of them, and then I'm going to weigh those and we'll determine whether I need more or not. Please do not get upset at me if you do not have a scale. If you don't have a scale, you're going to be kind of guessing or judging from what you see in this video, from how much I'm going to be cutting. Because I don't have really a better way of measuring something like this. A lot of recipes now are going to weight measurements. You're going to be seeing this a lot. So it's smart to pick one of these up. $20 will get you a scale, and that's really about what this one costs, if I remember right. So I need to get 1 pound of leek. I have it set for pounds right now, not for grams. So I have 11.6 ounces, and that is 1 pound, 1.7 ounces. So it's perfect. I won't need my 4th leek. I am just a little bit over, but not so much that it makes any real difference, and that's because I'm going to be cutting these roots off, and so I'm going to lose that extra weight. So, scale, very handy, almost absolutely necessary in the kitchen these days. All right, we want to split our leek lengthwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the blade of my knife and I'm going to plunge it straight down and just come back. And you don't have to cut all the way through, but it doesn't hurt if you do. When you open this up and take it to the sink, you're going to be washing out all that. Look at all that mud in there. Isn't that unbelievable how much dirt there is there? So I've got to do that to all of them. I've got to wash them out nice and good. Otherwise, I'll have dirt in my cream of mushroom soup, and I don't want that. If you've never worked with leeks, you just got a good first world view of what to do with them. Let's cut that root off. Boom, there we go. Don't need that part, okay? There we are. Alright, so I want to take these and cut them about the width of my pinky right there. That's usually between 3/8 of an inch and a 1/2 inch in width. All I have to do is do that, put those into my bowl, alright? And I'm going to do that for the full length, and I'm using every bit of what I have right here, including that green part. Remember, the green is good. It doesn't hurt a thing. It isn't quite as tender as the inner part. However, we're going to be cooking it up, okay? So there's our leek. Now please remember when you're cutting, something that's so important is how we hold the knife and how we hold the food, because either one done improperly can get you hurt. All right, so if I'm holding the knife the right way, I'm not holding the handle, because no matter how tight I squeeze this handle, no matter what shape the handle is, the knife, if enough force is produced, the knife can turn on you or do what I call rolling. In other words, too much force and suddenly that knife blade comes around on you and it's facing you or your hand, and it's a bad day, okay? Don't do that to yourself. Instead, take your first finger and your thumb and pinch the blade. Put your fingers rolled around the handle where the blade is, and this gives you the kind of control that keeps that blade from rolling on you. It will not do that. You're a lot safer. And when you're holding your food, get that thumb behind the fingers, take the fingers and curl them under, and that's how we hold our food to get it cut right. So, it's pretty simple stuff, isn't it? When I'm working on my mushrooms, I want to remove some of the excess stem. I don't like the lower part of the stem. Now, you can either do that by pushing it sideways, which will generally pop it free, just like that. That removes the stem altogether and gives you a clean cap to work with. You can also take that stem and just cut it like so and use your mushrooms that way. Whichever way works for you and you prefer, go with it. Some folks just don't want to waste any excess. Now this right here, this woodier part, I do not use in my soup. I will use this though when it comes to making a vegetable stock, just like the tops of those leeks. So we always save what we don't use to work with something else. So I've prepped the caps by removing the stems, and I'm going to go ahead and cut these up. And you want to cut your mushrooms at about a quarter to a 1/8 to a quarter of an inch thick. All right, so let me see if I've got a couple of different ones here. There we go. Something like that. This one's a little thicker, a little thinner, but in that range right there. All right, the great way of doing that. Now, something I want to mention about using that knife again. I was cutting my mushroom. When I get to about the center point, I need to turn it around, because sometimes the knife will slide down on certain foods that are angled, and if you turn it around like that, it's just a little bit safer. So consider that. I am presently taking 10% of each of my mushrooms and cutting them up into smaller pieces like this. Now what this does is it just allows you to extract a little more mushroom flavor. So you get the larger pieces of mushroom that show up in the soup, and then B, the smaller bits of mushroom that seriously flavor that soup. So take those slices, and you know, it doesn't hurt to, you can say, well, why slice them if I'm going to just do that to them? Well, slicing is the first part of this. Now remember, what I told you about holding the knife, I'm still doing the same thing, and I've got these fingers up here with the knife, with my thumb under, so the knife won't get anywhere near it. And that's just a simple rocking motion. Isn't that nice? It's a great way to cut things up. I need to get busy cooking. I'm going to be sauteing my mushrooms to start with. Now in order to do that, I have to have a hot pan. I'm putting a flame under it. I'm going to go ahead and pre-adjust my flame to the temperature I want. Always do this. I'm going to be cooking at a medium-high heat, so I need the flame at medium-high heat for the preheat. And the idea there, folks, is you want everything to be stable. You don't want to have to change the temperature of anything later on. So this is the way we do it. It's a good cooking method. As soon as this is hot, we're going to start with our searing. Now I need to show you what it takes to make sure the pan is the right temperature. How do you know it's the right temp? And by the way, never put your oil in first. See how it sizzles off? Well,
that pan is not the right temperature to do any kind of searing. You see, if the temperature had been right, it wouldn't have been sizzling and cooking off like that. If it was the right temperature, when I put water in there, the water will just kind of bead up together and eventually cause a single bead and just kind of roll and skate around in there. And the only time it'll sizzle off is when it comes close to the edge. All right, and we're going to see that in just a minute as soon as this is hot enough. Oh, looky there. It's still sizzling off a bit too quick, but we're getting there. See how it's starting to skate and roll around in there? That's what we want. Now I'm taking a towel, I'm wiping this out. And the reason I do that is I do not want water to be in the bottom of this when I go and put oil in there, because it would be a disastrous mess. It will explode and pop and splatter everywhere. Okay, looky there. See how in the bottom of the pan, just rolling around, skating. Pour that out, and I want to dry off any extra. Always do that. You do not want water to be in that when you introduce oil to it, okay? And I'm going to put plenty of oil in here. Now I'm just using olive oil. You can use a regular cooking oil if you want, whatever works for you. Either way, you're going to be using more than just a little bit, okay? So, boom. There are part of my mushrooms and these. And that smells so good already. It is the smell of olive oil releasing. Now, as I said, these things are just like little sponges. So we hit them with oil from below. Now we're going to hit it from above. I need to cook these until they are about, a third of the way reduced. Okay, so you're going to see them pull up just a little bit. And you can see how some of them look oiled and some of them look dry, and the bottom of the pan is dry. Look at that. See, I wasn't lying to you about the oil thing. There we go. Oh, that's beautiful. They've cooked down nice. I cooked them down, like I said, just about to the point I said. Now, see, we're getting fluid release. The fluid release is coming off of the mushrooms themselves. It's time to put in the chopped mushroom, and I'm going to top that with just a little bit more oil. I know, it's kind of scary, but this recipe does call for a decent amount of oil. That's why I like to use olive oil. You know, it's one of those things that I have going on. Stir that in. There we go. Now, at this point, I'm going to cover this. I'm going to allow it to cook for about 5 minutes. It's been about 5 minutes now. There's a lot of moisture released here, and there's about to be a little bit more moisture going on in this. What I'm going to do, put this in here. There we go. Get my leek right down in there. We'll take that leek, we're going to stir it in. Yes. So what we have here now is something that needs to cook for just a little bit. That leek needs to be made tender, and the way I'm going to do that is to simply do what we call sweating it. So I'm going to reduce my heat underneath this pot to medium. I'm going to keep it covered. I'm just going to let it cook for about 20 minutes, 15 on the short side. So here we go, turn that down to a medium. Actually, I'm taking mine to medium low, and I'm going to cook it like that. We're just going to sweat it really nice and pretty. As this is sweating down, I want to take some salt and salt this. And I'm going to put in about 1 teaspoon of salt in that. Go ahead and stir it in. Continue sweating as we've been doing. And that should be more than enough salt. And remember, your cheese has salt also. go. This is reducing nicely. The moisture has almost finished sweating out of the bottom. There's about another 5 minutes left on our 20 minutes of sweat time. Something I want to mention to you, you see me pick up the lid a lot with my hand, but sometimes they're hot. You can use a spoon or something like that and pick that lid up and see how well that works. You never have to touch them if you don't want to, and sometimes you don't have to reach for the a hot pad or anything like that. Have some good sweating action going on here, and I have my leek that has become very tender now, and that's what I needed, was to make that leek tender. Let's look down in here. We're going to put our butter in there. We're going to make a roux and turn this into kind of a mess before we turn it into a beautiful soup. Okay, I'm going to take my butter. You see how we've cooked off much of that liquid. Not all of it though. So I want to get the butter in there. We're going to get a little fat going on, okay? The whole idea here is to provide something that's going to provide, something of a body for the dish. You're trying to build body. And so we use what chefs have been using for ages, which is just mixing a little bit of fat with some flour and cooking that up. And believe it or not, it makes a decent quality soup. Now, if you'll notice, I've just got kind of a pasty mess here. In goes the rest of that flour. A little bit more for the oil, just to help out there with that butter. There we go. So, it's going to turn into a pasty mess. And I want to take that pasty mess and I'm just going to let it cook for a few minutes. I'm not going to stir it in any more than that. 5 minutes. This is about 2 minutes in. See how it's doing there? It's starting to solidify on the bottom of the pan, but it hasn't turned dark brown or anything, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to cover it and let it finish for the last few minutes. My roux has now cooked just for a little bit, and it's just a thick, pasty mess in the pot. Alright, that's exactly what I expected. I'm going to now pour in my broth. Okay? Now folks, get your broth in there. It's going to mix with that roux, and that broth is going to get thick real quick. Okay, there we go. And see, that's what that flour does, is it gives us that thickener. Alright, so it gives us body to the soup. And now, you know, once you've got a little liquid in there and it's thick, you can actually see the mushrooms really well. You can see the leeks really well. It all looks lovely. Now, I put that all in there. I want to take this and give it a 20-minute cook. I want to cover it. I'm going to bring the temperature up first. We're going to bring it to a boil. And once it comes to a boil, I'll lower the heat to low. We'll cover it, and we're going to let that simmer for 20 minutes. And it's just going to give it a good cook. Once that is over, 20 minutes later, we're going to let it cool down some. And I'm going to put the cream in this. It's going to be wickedly good in short order. Okay, so this is just a matter of patience and a little cooking. As you can see, we have bubbling going on. The boiling has started. So now I just have to cover it, reduce the temperature to low, and it's 20 minutes of simmer time. I like to use a timer, but I want to say this: if you don't have a timer, or you think you don't have a timer, think about this. If you have a microwave oven, almost all of those has a timer mode. Try it out. If you have a phone, almost all modern phones have a timer built into them. So give that a shot. You have a timer most likely. Well, my simmer is over. 20 minutes is finished. About every 5 or 7 minutes I got in here and stirred it, and that's what you want to do. You don't want it burning on the bottom or anything. so check it occasionally. It's beautiful. It's thick. It's thicker than I would want, but that'll change when I put my cream in this. I do not want to put my cream in right now. I need to bring the temperature down. Cream, simply put, will curdle at 175 degrees. Now there's a little trick called tempering. Tempering is really neat, and that's where we take some of this liquid right here and we pour it down into the cream, and that does what's called tempering the cream so that it won't curdle when you pour it into a nice hot liquid like this. Alright, I'm not going to push my luck, and in teaching this, especially to some folks who may be new to cooking, okay, let's be safe about it. Put a thermometer in there, which you really need to have, or we can see it here in a minute. Our temperature is way too high. When it comes down to 175, then I can start putting my cream in. To speed down to speed that cool down, I'm going to transfer to a pan rack, and that will dissipate heat from the bottom of the pan just a little bit faster. I need to talk to you for just a moment about thermometers. It is so important in the kitchen, and so many things depend upon their use. You can't make peanut brittle without a thermometer. It's absolutely essential. You can't make a lot of dishes, or you run the risk of problems with a lot of dishes without a thermometer. Now here I have what's called a digital chef's thermometer. When I turn this on, let me do this on, boom, I get my ambient temperature, the room temperature. The minute I plunge it down into this liquid, suddenly I see a temperature 182, 183, it's still climbing, 186. Alright, so this is very accurate, and these are wonderful to use. They run, price-wise, you're going to look at $20 to $30 for a top-end model, and they're great to have, but they're not absolutely necessary. Now this right here is showing 191.4 degrees, which will curdle my cream, so I don't want to mess with that right now. I have other kinds of thermometers. Right now I have this one in here, which is a fry thermometer or candy thermometer. It's used for either. And it's a nice thermometer the way it works. I like that type. They make a dial type with a metal rod that goes down also. Here is a dial type. This is one that's called a chef's thermometer. It's used very much the way this is. You take it out of its sleeve and plunge it into the food, and it will give you a reading right up here on this dial. So that's a neat way of doing it. This one moves a little bit slower. You have to be a bit more patient with it, but it's a great thing to use. Now these cannot be left in the oven. These are not baking thermometers, so don't do that with them. Get you a thermometer, 1, 2, or 3. Get a variety so you can do different things. And remember, these are going to make your cooking so much better. Now, while I like my little thermometer back there, and I do trust it for a lot of things, it's great for frying. It's absolutely necessary for doing peanut brittle or other types of hard candies where things have to be taken to an exact temperature. It's great for it. But at lower temperatures, it can act a little weird at times. What I like to say, it's a little hinky. So I want to take this. Again, we're at room temperature, 77. It's heating up because of my hand and the pot. So I want to shove this down in here. Let's get a reading. Okay, it's 169, 170. You know what? I think we're cool enough. I've got a good temperature to put my cream in, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. It's 170. It is below that 175 threshold where it'll curdle it. So now we can put it in there safely, and then we will slowly heat it back up over a low heat as we add in the cheese as well. It is time to add in my cream. I'm going to have a whisk handy because I'm going to use that in just a moment. To start with though, I'll just use the same spatula I've been using. There we go. Pour in about half of my cream. Work that just for a moment. And then I'm going to trade over to my whisk. I have a low flame under this. and I might have to bring it up to a medium low if necessary. This is going to bring down the temperature a lot because this cream was about room temperature. It had been out for just a little while. Wow, this is beautiful. The outer tine on a whisk will automatically track to the inside edge of a pan, allowing you to clean it out. If you just don't try to force it, just kind of allow it to ride onto the palm of your hand and push it in a circle, and it'll automatically clean out that edge and get everything mixed well. Okay, there we have it. I'm bringing this temperature up. We're going to put that thermometer back in. I want to be careful as I heat this not to bring it up in temperature too fast, all right? And when you have a whisk that's kind of full of vegetables, just gently wiggle it near the top of the liquid, and most of that'll come off, usually. I'm going to have a few pieces of that leek that are going to stick to it regardless, but not a problem. This right now is coming along absolutely perfect. I like to add my cheese to this when it gets around 150 degrees, and that's when it starts mixing in real well. In the meantime, just occasionally stir it. You can use a spoon at this point. You can use a whisk. Use the spatula that I used earlier. Any of them will work fine. It's time for the cheese to go in there. So here we go. Just going to gently sprinkle that in. And this will very gently, get rid of this, very gently melt into that cream. It's going to work in with the other flavors, and I'm here to tell you it's fantastic. Now, as again I've said before, that you can use a couple of different cheeses for this. I said you can use Parmesan, you can use Grana Padano. That's what I have here. You can also use Romano cheese. You could use Asiago cheese. They're all in the Grana cheeses of Italian cheeses. And the Grana cheeses are the dry cheeses, the aged cheeses, the ones that are a little sharper. And so it's just different ages and different locations that they are from. So I'll just keep stirring this for a few minutes. I can see my temperature is getting around 160. See, 165 in that neighborhood, which is a good temperature, and I want it to be at 165 before I turn it off and serve it up. I'm really looking forward to getting to enjoy this soup. The flavors that are produced when you do it just the way that it has been done right here, the flavors are incredible, and you will be surprised at just how good it is. Now, while I said I do trust my thermometer back here, it works better at higher temperatures, so I want to plunge this little guy in there, get a reading over next to it. 163, 164.8, 165. So I'm in there, 164, 165. I'm going to give it another 30 seconds to a minute. That's going to be enough to finish heating it off the way I need. The quantity of everything that we've used today, well, let's start right over here, folks. This is 1 quart of broth. Your choice of vegetable broth or chicken broth. We also used plenty of olive oil. You're going to use anywhere from about 3/4 of a cup to a cup in the cooking of those mushrooms. And as you've seen, they're like little sponges. They just soak the oil up. We have the cream right here. This is heavy cream, sometimes called whipping cream, and also sometimes called heavy whipping cream. It's all the same thing, folks, and that's 1 quart of that. 1 pound of mushrooms, the baby bellas or creminis. 1 pound of mushrooms here, which are the white button cap mushrooms. 1 pound of leeks after they're sliced up. We want 3 ounces or approximately 1 cup of shredded Grana Padano cheese or Parmesan cheese if you can't find the Grana Padano. I had used 4 tablespoons of butter, 1/2 of a cup of flour, about a teaspoon of salt, and that's one fantastic recipe. Let's take a look at the finished product and see what all of these wonderful goodies have given us. The soup is finished up. We have the right temperature. All I have to do now is dish it up, garnish it, and enjoy it. Folks, oh wow, look at this. Isn't that beautiful? Thick, rich, hearty soup. This one is a real delight. There we go. Now, as I do with a lot of dishes, I like a little garnish. I love my little green onions. So, guess what? A few little green onions. A neat way to finish it off and give it a little bit of an edge at the same time. Right there. I have one major regret right now, and that's the fact I'm allergic to mushrooms. Not like anaphylactic shock or anything, but it would have me itching for days if I were to eat very much of this. God, it's good though. That is what a cream of mushrooms should be. God, the flavor is so good. The texture of the mushroom is still there. I'm chewing one now, and it's spot on perfect. One of the things I like about mushrooms, they really are good with holding texture. They don't overcook, and it allows other things to cook very soft. You don't even notice that there is leek in this at this point. You can see little bits and pieces of green, but nothing substantial. It's cooked down and it's soft. And it makes the whole dish rich without standing out in and of itself. This is an excellent recipe. When you try it, I'm certain that you're going to love it. So please enjoy. Please take a look at Texas Cooking Today. A lot more recipes on there. There are all kinds of things. If you have a suggestion, please write it in the comments down below. I can use suggestions for other dishes to do. As well as, if you would like, please take a look in the description there. You're going to see some links to another YouTube channel, Chef Trotter's Tips. There's some interesting stuff on there, some stories. You might like it. There's also my website. Now, my website's where you're going to get stuff like the cap, the shirt. My recipes are sold at my website, and there's another link for this recipe right there in the description. So please take a look around, and thank you very much for watching my cream of mushroom video. You're in for a treat. Folks, thank you, and you have a good day. Yummy.